Welcome to another episode of the Christian Combatives podcast. Today we are being hosted again over at Christ Cord. This is a Discord server for Christians and for those who are interested in the Christian faith. If you would like to join in the conversation or just check out the server, head on over to discord.gg/Christian, discord.gg/Christian. I'm joined today by Stigma the Artist, and we are going to be talking about a movie that came out somewhat recently starring Brendan Fraser called The Whale. There's quite a few aspects of the film to get into, both artistic and kind of philosophical in nature. So with that, I expect it's going to be an interesting conversation. I personally found it an interesting film. So let's get it started off. I'm going to ask Stigma to kind of, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, we're going to be getting into all kinds of details on the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, my recommendation is thumbs up, go see it, don't bring kids. Stigma, your recommendation, thumbs up, thumbs down?
I definitely give it a thumbs up, but yeah, definitely not kid-friendly.
Okay, now if you haven't seen the movie yet, I would suggest you go and watch it now, unless you're one of those people who wants to learn all about a movie before they go and watch it, in which case, stay tuned, because spoilers begin now. This is your final warning. Stigma, what is the movie The Whale about? Like, what's with the title? Tell me something about the movie.
So I've been putting this off for a while just because I had heard a bunch of stuff about it, that it was sort of a character study into both a person who was grieving over a lost loved one and also a kind of I should say, a warning against, like, what's the specific word I'm looking for? A
hedonism?
Cautionary tale. A cautionary tale against, like, obesity, against cheating, all this kind of stuff that goes on in the movie. So the basic premise is that there's this man who is living alone in his apartment. He is a teacher for a online college course, but he keeps his camera off to prevent all the students from seeing him because he is grotesquely obese. He has an extreme eating disorder that he obtained after his partner died. And he has been basically just urging these students to, try to improve in English class. And the backbone of the story is basically that he's trying to reconnect with his old family that he left in order to basically be with a man, one of his students. And so he tries to reconnect with his daughter, tries to help her with her homework, and the rest of the story is basically him trying to get back together with her, to get to know her, while also, delving deeper into the psychology and the aftermath of grief.
Now, from what I understand, I think, and it totally makes sense this way because it's a single location movie. I think there's a couple like flashbacks to a beach scene or something like that. But the movie itself, everything in the movie takes place in a single location, in his apartment, and 99% of it, I want to say, kind of in the same living room / kitchen area. And from what I understand, I believe the movie was originally a play, like a stage production, and that makes sense to me the way that it's structured. So the movie is It's very dialogue heavy. It's very story heavy. If you're looking for a movie of, going around blowing stuff up, action, stuff like that, that's not really what this is. It's all about kind of character interaction. It's all about character development and kind of character definition. You're finding out who are these characters, how did they get where they are. It unravels it. Throughout the movie, you're finding out, why is this person like this? What are they dealing with? How did they get there? What's going to happen to them it's kind of a question, but it's not really the biggest question. That's often the question in a lot of movies. How are they going to get out of this predicament? In this movie, the question is more like, how did it get this bad? How did it get to this point? But
right, it is largely a character study rather than a specific adventure or I should say plot-based story. Like, it's very much centered around, like you said, character interactions, how a character develops. All the plot is pretty much shown through dialogue and through I would say excellent acting on part of Brendan Fraser. I believe he won the Oscar for his performance in this movie, which I think is pretty well deserved, not only because I haven't seen any of the other movies at the Oscar, so I have nothing to compare it to, but it's also really, I would say, a heartbreaking performance, and I was definitely engaged with his character the whole time, and I never got bored, even though it is pretty much shot entirely in a rather dimly lit apartment. Like I was surprised how like dim the lighting was. I sort of had to turn up my brightness quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that might be something that annoys some people. But yeah, it's supposed to be very grimy. It's supposed to be very claustrophobic, and you're supposed to get this sense of unease throughout the entire film. Because I think the film company that made this, I believe, is A24. I believe is the name of the company, and from what I remember, they're like very big on horror movies. Like that's their main forte. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure they're into the horror movie business. So that explains a lot of some of the cinematography in this and some of the sequences. But overall, yeah, it's definitely a movie that is heavy in more ways than one.
I got that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
low hanging fruit right there. But
Low
it's
hanging
it's
Three Musketeers
definitely
more. Yeah.
it's definitely something that is I think worth watching, if anything, for the just the philosophical angle and the character angle. You really do get to know these characters. You care about these characters, and they definitely make you feel the emotions they're trying to get you to feel.
I had some apprehension before bothering to watch this movie because I mean the movie, just like the Jeffrey Dahmer series, was tagged with the LGBTQ tag. Now I saw this tag in the movie. I'm like, oh, it's a movie about some homosexual couple and something like that. And the entire movie is, this was my apprehension, my concern, kind of based off of what we're seeing in every other sort of foray of entertainment, is okay, this is just going to be a movie that's going to tell me about how rotten everybody is who doesn't accept true love between two consenting men. It's going to be Brokeback Mountain, but it's going to be Broken Spring Couch or something like that. And that was what I thought, what I was concerned it might be, but it's not that at all. And I don't want to say that the sexuality of the sexual orientation of the character is irrelevant, but that's not that. It's not pushing this one-dimensional message of that. That aspect of the character is involved more with the struggles he goes through, and not necessarily in a purely positive aspect. Again, if you want to take June is starting, or by the time this episode comes out, June will already be ongoing. The love is love and everything is interchangeable, and men are the same thing as men and women, and things like that message. That's not really what's shining out here. Instead, you see Brendan Fraser's character abandons his family. He abandons his daughter. He abandons his wife to go pursue a relationship with a male student of his, a romantic relationship with a male student of his. And it's not necessarily portrayed as, but this is good and virtuous, and everybody needs to come around and learn to support him. And there's some characters like the guy's, Fraser's boyfriend's character, who's, again, well, spoiler alert already. He's dead, and it's a big reason why Fraser got so big. But that character's sister is one of the main characters in this movie, and her perspective is, why doesn't everybody just accept that love is love and people love each other and stuff like that? And Fraser's more wishy-washy on it. But from the perspective of like his daughter and his mom, he's kind of a monster. He just destroys his family for selfish, really sexual pursuits. And you can see the first scene in the movie, he's watching pornography. This is a man ruled by his passions. This isn't a portrait of, well, this is what love is. Everybody needs to get on board. So I was pleasantly surprised. As dark as the movie is, I was pleasantly surprised that there was some moral ambiguity there. It asked uncomfortable questions, whereas somebody would expect a Hollywood movie just to say, okay, here's the facts, love is love, etc. June, the month of June is Pride Month, and everything is going to fall into that category. It's like, is he a good guy or a bad guy? And if he's a bad guy, does he get redemption?
100%. And I actually had the exact same concerns when I heard about this movie, because I saw that Brendan Fraser was in this movie, and I don't know, I grew up with a bunch of Brendan Fraser movies, like the Journey to the Center of the Earth remake, the Mummy, of course, even Furry Vengeance, a comedy that he did. So I sort of have a soft spot for Brendan Fraser, and I know he's gone through tough times recently, especially with his divorce and with finances. So I was happy that he was definitely getting work again, and that he seemed to be in another big movie. So that interested me from the beginning. But then I started reading some of the comments, and some of them were saying that it was heavily anti-Christian. The story wasn't very interesting. It was very just grotesque with its content, and so that sort of kept me from watching it for quite a long time. And it was until recently I started reading more into it, and I think I saw a review from a Christian website. I believe it was Plugged In, um, a Christian reviewing website that reviews a bunch of different media. And they were talking about it, and I'm like, this doesn't sound anything like they've been saying that it is. It
Right.
wasn't inherently anti like religious, although religion does play a big part into the story, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, it was very much a heartfelt story about, you know, like I said, a cautionary tale, not just about obesity and eating disorders, but also about, you know, leaving your family, about selfishness, about pursuing your passions to the detriment of both yourself and everyone around you. And that is sort of the big driving force of the movie, which is that this guy, Brendan Fraser's character, he was married to a woman and he had a daughter with that woman. And he had been with her for several years, all the way until his daughter was 8 years old. And then he became infatuated with a male student of his. And eventually he just up and left his old family, his daughter and his mother, to pursue this relationship with his male student. And so if you look at that, even from the face value of it, like you'd think, why would he do that? That's not portraying this relationship that he has with this man in a positive light. If anything, it's basically showing that when you do something like that, when you selfishly pursue someone else, when you've already got a family, you've already got people that rely on you, that are intrinsically attached to you, that you're married to, when you leave them to basically pursue your own desires, no matter how genuine you think your feelings are, everything just falls apart for this guy. Like, he doesn't end up, you know, being happy ultimately. Uh, his lover eventually does die for I can't remember exactly what the events surrounding it was, but I think part of it was that his boyfriend was religious. He was with a church, and I think part of that contributed to what happened to him eventually, but I can't remember it exactly.
Yeah,
But
I think he ends up committing the boyfriend ends up committing suicide at some point.
right, yeah, and it was interesting because if the film was expressly like supposed to be pro-gay or pro-homosexual and anti-religion, they wouldn't have portrayed the relationship in this way. I don't think so, especially seeing uh, how his daughter and how his mother ended up as well. Or not his mother, his wife, his daughter and his wife ended up. The daughter was furious, and she had every right to be. The whole aspect of it being, you know, anti-Christian or anti-religion and, you know, pro-homosexual. I don't think that's the core of the film. I don't think that's what its, you know, main theme is.
Yeah, if that's something that's holding, if you are listening to this and you're a Christian, that's something that's holding you back from watching the movie. I would say that's not. Yeah, don't be worried about that. That's not what's going on in this movie. Now there may be inappropriate themes in the movie that you may not want to watch it for other reasons, but that is not. That was my concern as well. But yeah, so it seems if I had to, as I hear you talking about it, if I had to use one word to kind of describe characters, all the characters in the singular flaw of all the characters in this movie would be probably selfishness. I was going to say hedonism, but particularly Brendan Fraser's character is the epitome of selfishness, and you do empathize with him. You say, you know, oh, he's struggling and he feels pain and all these other things, but at the same time, everything that he does is with his own passions in mind. Obviously, the leaving his family thing, but then literally eating himself to death. The aspect of his food is one. Yes, there's kind of the hedonistic aspect of craving, craving what you get with, when you're eating, but there are parts in the movie where he's clearly eating to hurt himself. He's clearly eating because he wants to die.
Right. He refuses to go to the hospital. That's something that comes up many times where the characters
Yeah.
around him are urging him to get to the hospital, but he refuses every single time.
It's well, and this is an aspect where you can see, well, he doesn't really care that he starts to create a bond with his daughter. He could have created a bond with his daughter. He could have tried to reconcile more with his wife. He could have tried to improve these relationships, but instead, what he does is he tries to moralize by saying, okay, well, I've been out of my daughter and my wife's life this entire time. I'm going to give my daughter all of this money that I've been saving up from teaching, but I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself because I'm too miserable to keep going on. I'm going to deprive my daughter of a father because I am so self-absorbed. Incurvatus in se, I'm so curved in on myself that all I can focus on is my own misery, and I don't care who I hurt as long as I get to pursue what I want to pursue, whether that's another guy or whether that's eating or whether that's dying.
Right. And that's another aspect of the film that I think is very, I would say, pro fatherhood, because when you see that he leaves his family, he leaves his daughter to basically grow up on her own with a single mother, it shows that she's going through her teenage years. So I think she's like in her 16, 17 year range. She's in high school. And a large part of the movie is that her character is very, very juvenile. She's very much into the radical teenager behavior, getting into drugs, getting into fights, getting into, bullying. Like, she's a real rude character. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. You understand her, and she's even justified to be extremely angry at her father for leaving her. 100% justified. But her attitude is so unlikable, and she's so rude to him when you can see his character is trying to mend things, however pitifully it might be. He definitely is trying to do something right by her, because I think he understands that it was a mistake for him to leave and to pursue that relationship. But she just continues to just bash him, to name call him, and to say how much she hates him, how awful he is, and how much she wish he would die. It's
Well, at the same time, yeah. So she wishes that he would die, and she kind of celebrates the concept of his death. But at the same time, she's also furious with him for not being there. So she connects her own behavior and her own outlook to his absence.
Right, and the wife as well went downhill. She has a drinking problem. She has a problem with smoking, with drugs as well. And she has pretty much given up on her daughter. Like, she's basically like, yeah, since you left, she's become a monster. I think she audibly says that she's evil.
She's irredeemable. That there's nothing. And Brendan Fraser's. Well, okay, let's go through it real quick. I'm curious about what your perspective on the question of redemption and the different characters. First, the daughter. By the end of the movie, has the daughter been redeemed? Has she completed a redemption arc?
I would say it's not a full redemption. I think she's gone from hating him to being sympathetic to him. Like, I think before she thought about nothing but him leaving them, and she had no sympathy for him whatsoever. I don't think she's at the point where she'd be like, yeah, I want you back in my life now. But I think she's at the point where I don't want to say forgives him, because she doesn't audibly say this, although she does, smile at him at the end when he gets up to try and get to her. But I don't know. It's very interesting. You could definitely interpret it to be a quote unquote redemption or for forgiveness.
Well, I would say that I think I agree with you that she begins to make steps towards what looks like a redemption arc, which, he cuts short. Not that, he was basically at the beginning of the movie, basically he's going to die in a week, that because he's just so overweight and he's not going to get any help. And if he had if he hadn't been so selfish this entire time, this redemption arc that begins with her could have potentially played out and concluded itself. But again, his selfishness cuts short her redemption arc. But I do see, I see that she begins it. So I would say that that's kind of the first steps, the journey of a redemption
Right.
arc. But the end of his story ends that arc for her. So next character, the wife. Do you think that the wife is? Oh, so also real quick for the daughter, I would say also kind of her being a monster. There's a question over whether or not, like, she does something. She's really mean to this geeky Mormon or I don't know, whatever the quote unquote Christian character. I haven't looked into it. I think it is a cult from what I can tell. He's a member of a cult, like a Mormon. Basically, he's a Mormon, and he comes over to the house and is like trying to convert the guy. And
Yeah.
and she's really mean to him and does these really awful things to him. And Brendan Fraser's character does interpret it as a redemption arc, and he does interpret it as, oh well, she's better. She's trying to help him. She does something really nasty to this kid, and as a consequence of it, he actually he goes back to live with his family. In fact, I would say, I think that he's the only character in the entire movie who completes a full redemption arc. He is redeemed by the end of the movie. Oh, back in the graces. He's back with his family again by the end of the movie.
Right, the Mormon kid.
The Mormon kid, yeah. But the daughter, what she does is nasty, and the mom is like, yeah, she's being awful, and the dad is like, but no, you see, she knew that she was going to help this kid by being awful, so she really meant to help it. And I think he's just reading into it too much.
Yeah,
So I would
that's part
say-
of his character. The wife even expresses this, that he's always been a optimist. He never
Ignorantly
had any sort of
optimistic.
right. He's ignorantly optimist. He'd never, and that's something that builds your attachment to his character, is that he's really not negative throughout almost any part of the film. Like he definitely cries. He is very pitiful in the way he's like constantly trying to make things better, but at the same time it's endearing that he never like snaps back at someone who is deriding him,
Yeah.
provoking him. Yeah, he never hits back. He pretty much takes it, because I think he understands that he's at the end of his rope. He's going to be dying soon, so he'd rather not spend the last moments, fighting with a bunch of people. But
So for Brendan Fraser, for the whale, did he complete his redemption arc?
well, do you want the Christian answer or the film answer?
Well, I'll take either one, because I've got my own perspective, and I don't know that we'll necessarily agree on this one.
Yeah. So, in terms of his, so a big part of the film is that there's this Mormon kid that comes around. He says he isn't Mormon, but he pretty much is Mormon.
Yeah.
And he comes in at the beginning of the film, right when Brendan Fraser's character is having basically a heart attack, and he helps him get out of it. And so he takes this as a sign that God wants him to save him, to convert him, so that he can reach salvation through faith in Jesus Christ, right? So that's sort of the Mormon kid's whole plot point, is that he constantly is trying to come back, trying to help him spiritually and save him. He doesn't succeed in the end. That's all I'll say. He gives the arguments, basically that, hey, if you're living according to the flesh, you are, a slave to your passions. But if you let go of that, then even though you may die, you will live. Right? That's the passage that I think he reads out to him in the end. But Brendan Fraser's character is basically like, even though he's not, extremely rude to him, basically he's like, yeah, I've read all this stuff. I used to believe in this stuff, but I'm not interested.
I went to Catholic
anymore.
Sunday school growing up, so I don't need you to tell me what's in the Bible.
Yeah, I've read every pamphlet.
I've read it.
Yeah, I've read it
Cover to cover, bolt.
Well, I thought the Mormon kids. I mean, I thought his approach was mostly legalistic. It was you have to stop doing these things. You have to stop behaving these things. And he wanted, he's like, well, I can save your soul by just giving you enough law, but not. I don't know.
Yeah,
Again,
his character
if this
told me
is
the
Mormon,
most, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I guess it's because, like, as a Christian, and
you
when
see
you
where he
see
gets it
Christian
wrong.
representatives on film, you're just like, yeah, you're constantly looking for what they're doing wrong. You're like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, if you just view him as kind of a Mormon Aryan cultist, then it's like, okay, that makes sense. The guy's like, you kind of a weirdo, kind of quotes some Bible verses here and there, but really is
Right.
just kind of a legalist. So would you say the whale is redeemed at the end? So religiously, no, you don't.
Religiously,
he rejects.
no. Of course, the Christian answer is that he still rejects Christ. So
But
not in
from a
that way, but
secular character
between
perspective.
right, from a character perspective, I think he definitely redeemed himself. He acknowledged several times that he made a mistake. He even says during the scene where the wife and him are alone and the wife is about to leave, and he says, I need to know that I've done one right thing in my life, right? So he's basically saying the one right thing he does in his life is going to be, taking care of his daughter, making sure that she is safe, making sure that she has a future, which seems to indicate that he views pretty much all the decisions he's made to this point as a mistake. So I think in that way, he acknowledges what he did. He acknowledges that it was completely wrong to walk out on his family, and he manages to overcome that obstacle and walk to his daughter, and his daughter acknowledge him in a empathetic and a accepting and forgiving way. So I think in his case, yeah, he got a redemption.
Now, so this is why I'm going to disagree with you. And so one of the things that comes up earlier in the movie, she's not a caretaker. She's a nurse. She's the sister of his dead boyfriend, and she constantly comes over and kind of helps take care of him. And she'll tell him stuff like, don't do this, don't choke on this, don't stop doing that you're going to hurt yourself. And he just says sorry, 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 and she gets mad at him for saying sorry all the time. And it's this thing where he can acknowledge, oh yeah, I'm wrong, but then just kind of keeps doing it, like saying sorry will undo the fact. There's I'm going to show it to you at some point. If you've never seen the TV show BoJack Horseman, I know it sounds stupid, it kind of is, but there's a scene where one of the characters, one of the only good characters in the show, is cussing out the hedonist main character, and the main character says, "Well, we'll fix this. We'll make it all better. It's all it's my bad and everything." And the other character says, "No, you can't just say sorry and expect that to fix everything. It doesn't mean anything. This is just an impulse word that you're saying. You think that saying sorry, not repentance, but just saying the word is the solution." And I think that this plays in later on. I believe that his redemption arc would have been if he stopped living for himself and started living for others. As a character, I think that would be his redemption arc. But what I see, maybe pessimistically, cynically, is that by the time he gets to the end, he says sorry for everything, but he's been saying sorry his whole life, and that hasn't, it doesn't impact his behavior at all. What good is it? It's in James 2, it's faith without works or whatever. You keep saying sorry, but if that doesn't move you, not that you're going to stop sinning and it doesn't count. But anyways, so he gets to the end, and the thing that you said is exactly what I was going to bring out is that he says, I want to know that I've done at least one good thing. I want to know that I've done one good thing. And that's what he does at the end. He accomplishes his goal for himself. I don't think he does it for his daughter. He does it because he wanted to do a thing, and he did the thing. And now he gets to pat himself on the back. I think that's what he accomplished.
Well, that is brought up, I think, by the wife, where he is basically talking. He's talking to his wife in this scene, and she says something to the effect of, "You're still being selfish. It's still all about you."
Right.
I definitely get that aspect of it, because you're right. If he actually wanted to change through action and actually wanted to redeem himself, he would have gone to the hospital and attempted to, fix his life up to be a part.
Give a few more years to his daughter. If
Right.
this is that's what I would have wanted to see.
I think at that point he was past the point of no return in terms of his health. So maybe that has something to do with him just learning to accept it. But you're right. Like him, absolutely, he still eats himself to death.
Right.
Throughout the film, he still, is trying to reconnect with his daughter, perhaps if for nothing else, to ease the guilt that he feels in his heart over leaving them and leaving them in this state. Um, I definitely see that perspective, although I would say that even with all that, he at that last moment he still, I would say, attempts to um, fix himself in a way that uh, is more selfless, because you can see throughout the film he puts down some things to eat. Like he had that Snickers bar and then he starts eating it, and then he's like, no, I'm going to put that away. So you can definitely see in his mind
Yeah, there
the
are little
gears are
glimmers
turning.
of a desire for change, but the follow through isn't there, or at least there isn't enough time given for the follow through. I think the resolution of this film, for so many of the characters, is too little, too late. It's with the daughter, with the wife, with any of the characters. It's, well, that would have been great if you had been working on this for the past 8 years.
Oh
Now,
yeah, I can agree with that.
yeah, and no, this is not me saying that it's bad. I love it when movies. Well, that sounds kind of. I love it when movies have negative consequences. The story is good, and it's believable, but it is not a happy ending. In fact, the quote unquote happy scene at the end is so bittersweet, because I think that amplifies it. You're like, look at, if he had taken this attitude the entirety of his life, the past few years of his life, he could have been there for his daughter. He could have been there, rebuilt the connection with his wife, even if he never, remarried her or anything like that. He could have gotten better health. He could have provided something more for his students. But
Right,
too
and I think
little,
the
too late.
end, and I think the ending actually sort of implies that he died pretty much right then and there. He had a heart attack because of the strain of picking
Yeah.
himself up and walking over to the room. So I think, yeah, it's definitely a very, it's a deceptively happy ending, but a deceptively bad ending too, because like you said, he ultimately doesn't get that full reconnection with his daughter, even though she may have looked on him more sympathetically, even forgiven him. It's still it's still not enough, I should say, right? Because she still needs a father figure in her life. She still needs someone to be that male role model that she needs in order to help her develop all the way. So
Right. I really like the connection that they have where, I mean, he's got this theme that he has with his students where he's saying he doesn't, at the end, he doesn't care if they follow the curriculum. He just wants them to say something true. And she writes this, this really rude poem. And he just is so inspired by authenticity and stuff like that. And he makes this connection with her where you can see, oh man, if only they had years together, how much he could have inspired in her, in growing her as an individual. But I think this is This is more realistic than a story where everything gets wrapped up in neat little bows. Everybody has a happy ending. I just watched. My father, for the first time, watched Princess Bride. I don't know how he never saw it before. I think he's tried to watch it and he's just fallen asleep
wow, never
before.
saw it before. That's a
Yeah,
classic.
so yeah, and I think the only reason he watched it is because he heard like Elon Musk or somebody reference it. So he's like, "Oh, I got to check out this Princess Bride movie." I'm like, "Yeah, you kind of should have." He says, well, he said, "What service should I watch it on?" And I said, "Well, most of us don't watch it. We just recite the whole movie from start to finish."
Right.
But it's at the end of the kid is complaining in that movie, that's not the way it's supposed to end. The good guy is supposed to get the princess, and they're supposed to get married and live happily ever after. And real stories don't end like that sometimes. Shoot, who was that? There is a something brothers, not the Wachowski brothers. These film brothers. They make movies, and they're known for these sort of realistic, doesn't wrap up every
The Russo
aspect of
brothers?
it. Is it No Country for Old Men? Where the psychopath with
Uh
the crazy haircuts walking around, is like
yeah.
killing people? You know what I'm talking about? And then at the end of the movie, like he
I
just
know the
kind of
movie. I
walks
don't know the
off.
directors.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I'll have to look it up because that's one of the themes of their movies is that they aren't wrapped up. There's a movie called that they came out with, I believe, called A Serious Man, and the guy's a teacher or something like that. I don't remember what happens during the course of the movie, just various stuff. But there's like a confrontation where there's going to be a showdown with this bad guy, and he's going to chase him down, and well, the bad guy has a heart attack and dies off screen somewhere else. It's so anticlimactic, but it's just well, that's life. That's what happened. He just had a heart attack, and then at the end of the movie, he's writing on the chalkboard. I remember he's writing something on the chalkboard, and he goes outside, and there's a tornado because they were living in Kansas or something. And that's the end of the movie. It's not that he dies. It's not that they hide in a bunker and they live there. It's just his life continues on, and that's the end of the story, and that's where they ended it. And that's kind of, I mean, this is more. I don't want to say all the loose ends were tied up, but this is more intentional than that. It's not just leave people hanging, but it's just that's just how life is. You don't always get the chance to complete that full redemption arc. It's
Right.
not a fairy tale.
It's inferred that he might have died right there, but he could have not. It doesn't really reveal to you how their story ends. It only shows that
A bright light.
he gets up and he carries his weight and he walks over to her while she reads him this poem that she wrote when she was 8, that he reads to himself constantly over and over again to help him whenever he's like having a heart attack or trouble breathing.
No. That's not what that is. So she wrote a review of Moby Dick when she
Right, a review of Moby Dick.
But the reason he reads it is not to calm himself down. He wants that to be. He thinks it's the most beautiful thing he's ever read. He wants that to be the last thing he's ever heard. So it's not to calm himself down. He's again indulging in this pleasure of he enjoys these words so much. He wants that. He thinks it'll be a poetic death if he dies hearing the most beautiful thing that's ever been written, and that it's been written by his daughter. So yeah, as he's kind of toddling his way over to her, the lights get really, really bright. And he's surrounded by a white light, and his feet kind of start to float off the floor. Now, maybe he collapses, and they finally call paramedics, but maybe he dies. It doesn't really say. That's just kind of the end of the story.
Right. Yeah. And that's interesting because he basically tries to use it as a coping sort of mechanism where he understands that he's going to die, and he doesn't want to die like completely alone and completely devoid of any of his family. So that's like the last thing he holds on to in an attempt to hold on to something of his family that he knows that he himself lost.
So I would say okay. Yeah, I'm not going to say final thoughts because I want to talk about the kind of the Christian aspect of the movie. But just thinking back on the movie, the more I think about this character, and there were definitely moments where I kind of empathize and you feel bad and you hurt because he's hurting. But at the same time, he is a monster. He is an awful, awful, selfish human being. And you can empathize with him, but at the same time, like, recognize so much of everything that he does is just for his own sick benefit.
His own guilt. He thinks that this
guilt,
will
assuage, yeah. But I don't know. I was so
he basically gives off the inference that he deserves this. The reason he is basically eating himself to death is, and he even says this. He's like, when he's having a conversation with his daughter, and his daughter basically tells them, how could you just leave us and not be a part of my life? You could have been a part of my life. And then he says to her, who would want something like me to be a part of their life? So yeah, he basically this incredible guilt that he is constantly trying to basically pay penance for, in a way, by making himself miserable.
I mean, I don't know. Again, maybe this is the cynical aspect of me, but there's a part of me that irritates me even more. It feels to me like this, oh, woe is me attitude. Nobody loves me. And
which can still be selfish.
It can be selfish. Now, to some regard, there are people that awful things happen to them. It just happen to them, time and time again, and they do deserve pity. But then there's other people where it's like, okay, you know that this is happening to you because of this thing that you're doing. If you change this behavior, it'll stop happening. And it'll never work. I'll never, I could never go to a doctor. They'll never tell me anything good. I'll never, the psychologist, psychiatrist could never help me. I could never. It's like, you're not
right, because
trying
of the healthcare costs. That was his excuse.
Well, that's his excuse. He wants to hold on to the healthcare costs, and it's helpless anyway. They could never help him, and he wants to give all the money to his daughter. But it's just this woe is me, self pity kind of thing that I don't know. There's a certain maybe it's a cowardice. Maybe that's what maybe it's self-justifying cowardice where it's well, I don't have to try because I'm so pitiful that whatever I do will fail, so then I can just commit to not trying. And it's an attitude that's so easy to fall into in reality, which so I would say that this is a mark, at least in my book, this is a mark of a good movie that makes me feel impassioned about the characters, not necessarily in positive ways, but particularly in complex ways. Again, empathetically, sometimes I'm like, oh man, this poor guy, like they're really saying some awful things to this guy. But other times it's like, you idiot, you stop whining. Stop it, stop crying, get up. What are you doing? Put down the sandwich. Like there's an aspect of me that wants to throttle this guy and say, snap out of it. And that kind of happened. Another character in the movie, the nurse in the movie, she has that same reaction to him. She's just like, knock it off. Sorry. No, stop saying sorry. No, sorry. Oh man. So very good writing of characters. There are no good guy, bad guy in the movie. There's no Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader in the movie. There are complex characters with positive and negative traits, things you can empathize with, things you can hate them for, issues that are based on other issues. How much of it is their fault? How much of the daughter's behavior is her fault? That kind of thing. I really liked it. I really enjoyed the movie. There's a lot, and it's a movie that has a lot that you can talk about. It's not shallow at all.
Yeah, it's got lots of different themes going for it, not just a cautionary tale about obesity, but also about, like you said, selfishness, broken families, pursuing your own passions above the needs of other people. Gluttony, just all these things that sort of come together. Honesty is another one of the themes that it talks about a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely a multifaceted film with a lot of different angles going for it. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed watching it. I definitely enjoyed watching it. It, like I said, it's a heavy movie. I wouldn't watch it again soon. I'd probably have to watch it with other people because, yeah, it is one of those films where it makes you think for a long time. But you've got to like take a break from it, sort of like Schindler's List. Like that movie's incredible. I really enjoyed watching that movie, but I don't think I'm gonna watch that like over and over again.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you on that. It was entertaining, but it wasn't a popcorn movie where you just watch it and you watch it again. Oh, what's on? Oh, Speed. Let's watch that. Or okay,
right,
so
it's like a really good philosophical book.
It's a good, that's the thing is it's like it's a book that you can, it's worth talking about later. But one aspect that we haven't really gotten too far into that I'd really like to focus on now is the aspect of Christianity. How is Christianity portrayed? How is it acted out? Is it unfairly portrayed? Things like that. So what did you think about the movie's take on Christianity?
Well, I already said that the Mormonite character of the story was my least favorite, just because I think he was just so pitiful. He was just like
not even in the same way as Brendan.
Yeah, not in the same way, like an empathetic pitiful. It's just like, wow, you're just a wimp. You're a wimp. He doesn't really, have any 2 feet to stand on. He his story basically goes that he is part of a church called New Life, which I don't know, is like a weird amalgamation of like Seventh-day Adventists. So they're really big on like end time stuff. and then Mormon, of course, because they're apparently very big on evangelism and going door to door with pamphlets and the whole shebang. And he basically tries to convert Brendan Fraser's character because he believes the end times are near and that there's no time to wait. He believes this is why he was called to his house when he was having a heart attack. And so he comes back several times in the movie to his house trying to get him to convert. And eventually it's revealed that he's not with that church anymore and that his parents basically have kicked him out because he stole money from the missions trip because he didn't think that the missions trip that his church had sanctioned was doing anything. They were basically sitting on a curb giving out pamphlets. And he's trying to get them to see that, like, we could be doing more. We could be actually going door to door, actually helping people. And his missionary leader was basically saying, no, we're not going to do that. That's not what we do. We stand on this corner, we give out pamphlets, and we tell people, the gospel. And so he gets so frustrated that he steals the money for the missionaries, and he takes off to wherever Brendan Fraser's area is to, try to help people in a more personal way. But yeah, so that eventually comes out. He confesses everything. He used to be a pot smoker, so that comes up. He used to be he was trying to get off it, but the daughter basically egged him on to continue to smoke pot. So, there's a lot of different things going on here, but yeah, his basic character is that he is trying to earnestly help people in the way that he thinks would be best. And so that would be like face to face, going door to door, telling people about the gospel. And the annoying part about him is that he doesn't seem to meet Brendan Fraser's character. I need to stop saying Brendan Fraser's character. I need to remember what the name was.
I don't remember. Just the whale.
Yeah, the whale. He doesn't meet him where he is. Like, he is strictly interested in trying to get him to convert as quickly as possible, just throwing a bunch of verses at him, throwing a bunch of pamphlets
just pray
at him.
The sinner's prayer with me,
right.
Read this chick tract, and we'll be good to go.
Right, basically like the summaries notes of like, okay, this is Jesus, this is the gospel, and then Brendan Fraser basically says, yeah. Yeah, and then Fraser's character says, yeah, I've read through the Bible several times. I've read all the pamphlets from your specific church. I know all this stuff. And so he's like, oh, that's good. Then why aren't you, converted? And he's just, his knowledge seems to be so like elementary. He's not very good at this at all. And the whole time I was like, man, there's like 50 different things you could have said to him. There's like 50 different ways you could have gone about this. A much better response and a much better way of conducting himself. And like I said, he was just wimpy. He was constantly, trying to run away from the problems when everyone's like, get out of here. And he's just like,
he's wimpy and pushy at the same time. So in terms of, they tell him to go away, and he does keep coming back. And as you're describing kind of what happens to him in the story, what's kind of standing out to me now is he's almost, I don't know, I'm still working this in my head. It seems almost like a mirror image of Brendan Fraser's character. So Brendan Fraser's character is acting just for himself, and he does bad things for his own selfishness. This character, the Mormon, he is acting specifically because from the beginning he wants to help people. So he steals the money because he wants to explicitly go out and help people, and his focus is not on himself. He's standing around being berated because he thinks this will allow him the capacity to go and interact and to help other people. So he's almost got this inverted character of Brendan Fraser, and even the ending. So he starts off, his character's arc starts off, it's bad. What he's done is bad, and it's awful, and whatever. But it gets better by the end. Whereas Brendan Fraser's character, arguably, he dies. So the whale dies. So right. It gets worse and more chaotic at the end. Whereas the Mormon kids, it's chaotic at the beginning, and all the loose ends are tied up by the time he gets to the end. And he has that reconciliation with his family, whereas the whale doesn't really have the reconciliation with his family. Maybe he's beginning on that journey, but he doesn't really have that reconciliation. So I don't know. Maybe this was just something that popped out to me. I don't know. Do you see sort of a mirrored aspect there, or am I just imagining things?
You could say it is a mirrored aspect. He definitely seems to have an earnest desire to want to help people, right? He didn't steal the money just to, buy himself stuff and to go out and get himself a new car or something or some new clothes. He used it to, get a bus ticket so he can go out and actually see if he can serve people face to face, in a more personal way. I think it was mostly just the way he went about it was just really, ticking me off, right? Because, like I said, it was elementary. It was kind of infantile. He didn't understand what he was doing, really. He only knew tell them the message and then basically expect them to convert. Right.
Feel
convert
the burning in their bosom.
He didn't know how. Yeah. Right. He didn't know how to respond to actual questions that the characters were giving him, which, are basically are basic questions. If you've gone through any sort of apologetics course or theology course, they asked questions that were very easy to refute, but pretty much his only response was, well, I'm here to help and God wants me to help. I believe it's God's will. And I'm just like, there's so many things you could have told them. And then I think what really just made me just sigh and roll my eyes was at the end where he finds the whale's boyfriend's Bible, because the whale's boyfriend, I think his name is like Alan or something. He used to be part of the church that the Mormon kid is part of, and he was super devout to it. And so he finds his Bible and he finds, the verse that is highlighted. I don't remember exactly what the specific passage designation was, but it was basically saying that if you live according to the flesh, then you will die. But if you live according to the spirit, though your body may die, you will live again. And so he takes that as like, wow, I understand now. I totally get it. And so he goes to him and he's like, yo, have you read this verse? Do you know what this means? And he basically expects that to be enough to change Brendan Fraser's mind. And when it doesn't, he's like, well, I don't understand. I thought you understood this. It's right there. Listen to that verse. And then basically Brendan Fraser starts to. This is the only time I think Brendan Fraser's character is more provocative towards the kid, because he's like, right, confrontational. He's basically saying, going over what his relationship with his gay lover was like. He's like, oh, we'd be in the meadow for entire afternoons naked. And then we'd make love. And then the kid's getting disgusted. And then Brendan Fraser calls him out. And he's like, oh, you find me disgusting, don't you? You find this disgusting. And then he's like, no, that's not what it is. Until eventually he's like, yes, you're disgusting. And then he just storms off. And I'm like, at that point, I was like, you idiot. You just tell him that he's disgusting. And instead of basically apologizing and continue to, try to have a dialogue with him, you basically just storm off and give up. And I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah. But definitely plenty of hair-pulling moments as a result of that character alone. So to wrap this all up, any overall thoughts on the movie that you want to get out besides what we've already talked about?
The lighting could have been better. Although that was probably a conscious choice to try and further build that sense of unease and claustrophobia.
Oh yeah, so, you really felt trapped there in the room with this guy who took up half the room. It was lots of uncomfortable angles of, you just see his entire gut and he's just kind of his face poking up over it and you're like, man.
Right. And yeah, you can definitely tell that this was A24's production, because it definitely a lot of sequences in this played out like a horror movie, which in a way it kind of is. Like it's really scary just how enormous Brendan Fraser's character is, and the prosthetics team and the makeup team did a great job. Like it looked 100% real, and it really made you sort of like repulse, like physically repulse. And so
it wasn't like it wasn't cartoonish. You looked at it and you're like, I know people who maybe aren't that big, but people
They're getting
are
there.
that big in the world. Those people exist. I've seen pictures
Oh,
and
yeah.
images and videos and stuff where those people exist. And
Yeah, what is it? The show, the My 500-Pound Life or something like that, or My 600-Pound Life.
it's
Yeah, like I've seen episodes of that, and I'm just like, wow.
yeah. All right, yeah. I guess so. My final thoughts on the movie. I would definitely say go watch it. Yeah, it's worth talking about. It's one of these movies where you'll watch and you'll say, "Gee, I wish somebody else had seen this this art film because I really want to get into the weeds on it."
Right. If you're not a big thinking person, you don't really want to watch a movie where you have to contemplate the characters and the decisions and what's on the screen. If you just want to watch a movie that you can,
Turn your
rewatch
brain off
over and
for it.
over again, right? You can turn off your brain. You can have a nice soda, some popcorn while you're watching. This is definitely not the movie in that moment,
Yeah.
but it is certainly a worthwhile watch for anybody who is looking for a good character study, for a good psychological sort of breakdown of grief, of selfishness, and of eating disorders and addiction and all that stuff.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you also to Christcord for hosting this event. Again, if you'd like to join a Christian Discord server, it is discord.gg/Christian, discord.gg/Christian. This was a review of The Whale, a movie with Stigma the Artist, and myself. You don't know my name. God bless you and take care.